Hello, my name is John Sheffield, and I'm a professor at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. The title of my presentation is Green Hydrogen, Today's Status and Tomorrow's Challenges. My professional career in the field of hydrogen energy began in 1976 when working for Pratt & Whitney Aircraft in West Palm Beach, Florida, USA. Specifically, we're developing advanced technologies for high-power continuous wave hydrogen fluoride and deuterium fluoride chemical lasers. I'd like to share with you this photograph that was taken about 2 years ago when a small delegation from the International Association for Hydrogen Energy met with Pope Francis to discuss how hydrogen plays a role in addressing our climate change issues. About 10 months after visiting with him, we were happy to announce that the Pope received 2 hydrogen fuel cell Pope mobiles provided by Toyota. One of the other leadership roles that we see in the world is the Hydrogen Council, and their look to the future. They have a united vision and a long-term ambition for hydrogen to foster the clean energy transition for a better, more resilient future. One way to start this presentation about today and tomorrow's challenges is to look at the landscape. We have the environmental effects, we have various energy supplies, and now we're beginning to look at energy storage and conversions. We'll also have the energy transmission, whether it's electric and natural gas is our traditional modes. We have customers that are residential, commercial, and industrial. And we have the natural carbon uptake. So there's a balance there that the renewable hydrogen, the green hydrogen, has a role to play. Let's be clear. What is green hydrogen? Green hydrogen is hydrogen produced by splitting water from an electrolysis using excess renewable electricity. That is to say that when we're producing renewable electricity from solar PV or wind, whether it's onshore or offshore, that we use that directly into the electric grid. When we have excess, that's when we generate the green hydrogen, and that becomes the energy storage for renewable energy sources. Green hydrogen is key to decarbonizing many sectors of our economy. First, we integrate the renewable energy systems. Second, we distribute the energy across, and we have what some people refer to as sector coupling. Think of it as coupling the electrical grid with the natural gas distribution systems. We also increase the energy system resilience, a very important aspect in today's world. In looking at the future in terms of challenges, we need to decarbonize our transport. Likewise, we need to decarbonize industry. And finally, we need to decarbonize building heating in many locations in colder climates. Let's look at the green hydrogen energy system. As we see here, we have photovoltaics and wind or biomass that produce electricity, and that goes directly into the electric grid. When we have excess renewable electricity, then we produce the green hydrogen through the electrolysis of water. Once we have that green hydrogen, then we can store it. An example here is stored in compressed hydrogen cylinders. Likewise, then when we need to respond to the demand on the grid, we can take that stored green hydrogen through a fuel cell system and put electricity back into the grid, giving us a system resilience. If we want to, we can take that hydrogen that has been stored through the fuel cell and provide important sectors of our demand, and that is data centers, commercial, industrial buildings, hospitals, and including in that is the renewable microgrids. We can use hydrogen as fueling for our fleet of vehicles, particularly in the heavier duty vehicles, the heavy duty trucks, buses, and so on. So in this system, we can think hydrogen produced by electrolysis using low-cost renewables and storing and later using electricity on demand. And these are the part of the green hydrogen energy system. Now let's look at another way of seeing that and looking at the box that is our green hydrogen component. That is renewable electricity from wind or solar as an example. And normally that renewable electricity is going to the grid. When we have excess, again, we do the electrolysis by supplying water. Once we release that from the green shaded box, then we might be mixing that green hydrogen with gray hydrogen as shown here. If we capture the carbon dioxide, then that hydrogen that's coming from the reformer, whether it's steam methane reforming or auto reforming, becomes what we call blue hydrogen. So at this point, the hydrogen is indicated as gray because at the worst case, it would be. Now that hydrogen can go directly to local gas turbine power plants, gas engine power plants, go into the natural gas pipeline for distribution. The pipeline becomes an energy storage media itself. The hydrogen then can be used in the normal traditional ways in refinery and petrochemical applications, such as the hydrocracking of our crude oil. Through the pipeline, then it goes to distant natural gas power plants, gas engine power plants, industrial customers, and residential commercial entities. Here's another even broader landscape of the hydrogen production, supply, and distribution in use. Core to this is the hydrogen storage for the integration of the intermittent renewable energies. So we see in the upper left, we have the traditional sources of energy, say coal, wind, and solar are the renewables. With water, through the electrolysis, we have hydrogen that can become stored. Across the top, we see one pathway we'll go through in more detail later, but that is to convert the hydrogen to ammonia. And that ammonia, the green ammonia potentially, then goes into greening our agricultural. The ammonia, the green ammonia, then can be transported across the globe. So let's first look at the two concepts of blue hydrogen and green hydrogen. Hydrogen today is predominantly made up of conventional steam methane reforming of natural gas. As of 2018, about 95% of the global hydrogen production was from fossil fuels, that is natural gas, by steam reforming of that natural gas. To be blue, the carbon emitting hydrogen production process must be coupled with the carbon capture and storage, CCS, to capture the CO2 from the flue gases, for example. The carbon capture and storage process can double the overall cost of the plant, the CapEx cost, and so generally is seen as more scalable to industrial as industry expands and easy to supply to the industrial customers and clusters that need to decarbonize very quickly. Green hydrogen production, on the other hand, today is in the capacity of 20 to 25 gigawatts. Now, just yesterday, on September the 15th, there was an announcement out that a 5 gigawatt electrolyzer was installed for the purpose of producing green ammonia. This represents about 2 to 3% of the total ammonia production in the world. So just in one contract, and this year in 2022, we see that increase somewhere and potentially in the 20 to 25% increase in the order for the one day. The traditional modes here, as we see, are the alkaline electrolyzer cells or the polymer electrode membrane. However, yesterday's announcement for the 5 gigawatt electrolyzer is in fact a solid oxide fuel cell with higher efficiencies. Looking back at the total landscape, production, supply, and distribution in use, now we look at the other side. Hydrogen, it becomes the energy vector. And it's important for us to see the aspects of that, blending with the grid, ammonia conversion that we just mentioned, dedicated hydrogen networks. So this provides the hydrogen can be used to store and move renewable energy production from where it can be generated at low cost to demand centers where it is monetized to overcome intermittency, excess supply of renewable power generation. And that's important. If we're to end the race to zero emissions by 2050, we do need to have excess supply of renewable power so that we have the excess renewable electricity to produce the green hydrogen. And as shown here again, the example of the conversion of electrolysis of water to produce green hydrogen, to produce green ammonia. Then that green ammonia can not only to decarbonize the agricultural industry through the ammonia as a fertilizer, but also can be transported across the globe more conveniently as liquid ammonia that has a higher, much higher the energy per volume, about 3 times what it is in compressed hydrogen at 700 bars. So that provides us a global network in terms of the energy vector concept. Now, if we were talking with utility grid people, they would traditionally look at hydroelectric power plants as one of the sources up in the top right corner of this image here. Nuclear fission power plants that are generating electricity is another. Coal-fired steam process that generates electricity, and natural gas-fired turbines as an example. All of those go onto our electrical grid. Now, we have other applications that can be characterized as either on-grid or off-grid. The on-grid could be our renewables. We could have wind power with energy storage represented here as if it's a battery, and solar PV with a battery, or wind could be at a scale, at a utility scale that goes directly into the grid. Now, in addition to that, we have some type of short intermittent battery storage on the grid from our renewables. Now, once we have what we think of as power to gas, P2G, or more general power to X, P to X, or even more general than that, X to X. So in the power to gas concept shown here in the center of this diagram, we're producing the hydrogen from the electricity. That then go into a hydrogen industrial park, that is chemical raw materials, decarbonizing a steel industry, distributed combined heat power systems, say in a steam turbine, where we can have a 2-cycle combined efficiencies that are higher, and at scale of up to 2 gigawatts of power from a hydrogen-fueled gas turbine. So we have the electricity as well. And then off-grid, we have 2 aspects. One is a grid-connected microgrid that we talked about in the earlier diagram, where we have at renewable power plant with some type of power condition with a fuel cell to respond to the electric demand response. So the grid connect of the off-grid microgrid provides some redundancy. And then the other would be, we think of as an isolated island, where it is off-grid and has no grid connections. So we still have the renewable energies and responding to the demand-side management. So let's look a little more into this as a deep dive and think of it as our green hydrogen that we're focused on today. So with the green hydrogen, we have production, we have a transformation process where either we producing a synthetic fuel or green ammonia we described, or there's no transformation, we simply go to the transport. And the transport could be ship, trucks, pipelines, and storage. The end use can be categorized in various sectors. Industrial sector is an example, where the hard-to-abate industry sectors of steel, chemical, and refineries. In the transport, we have to look at the transport using hydrogen or green ammonia. So the green hydrogen or green ammonia using for ships, aviation, cars, rails, trucks, buses, and so on. So we have also the electric generation in the lower right corner of this diagram. So how do we get there? Well, we have to scale up. So let's look at the hydrogen use by sector, and let's look at hydrogen use by region. And we'll look at two strategies, a rapid and a net zero, the race to zero to 2050 with zero emissions. Under the rapid, the use of hydrogen is most pronounced in China, which is leading the world in its adoption and deployment of infrastructures and other policies supporting its use. Of course, it's a large economy and a large population. So if we look at the dates of, instead of 2030, at the traditional anticipation inflection point in the race to zero, we'll look at 5 years beyond that inflection point. So we'll look at 2035 and 2050, the target date for zero emission. And if we look at the hydrogen by sector, we'll have red for industry, the pink and buildings, the blue for transport, and the purple for power. And in the 2050 under the rapid, we see that industry dominates the hydrogen sector. That's not a surprise. And by 2050 in the net zero, however, we see transport picking up sort of a second place, and then a toss-up between power and buildings. Now let's look at hydrogen use of the same two strategies over the same two dates of 2035 and 2050. In this case, we have the color bars represented by the dark blue for China, green for North America, Europe in sort of the orange color, yellow in the Asia and India and other parts of Asia in the light blue, and others is quite important when we go out to 2050. In countries of economic development, we'll see them playing perhaps the most significant impact of reaching our net zero targets. So in the 2050 under the rapid by region, we see China having the dominance. North America in second place, others is right after that, and Europe in between. Now, if we go to the net zero strategy, we see that China is large. Perhaps the other, it could be larger than China. We could have India of a significant part, probably larger than the other parts of Asia, approaching that of Europe, and about half of what North America is. So we do see quite a bit of information here in the scaling up and how do we get there. Let's look at another way of doing that in hydrogen production by color. The same strategy of where we started at this report of 2018, 2035, and 2050. And the rapid and the net zero, by 2050, we have more or less a toss-up between blue and green slightly edging out the others. And by 2050, under the rapid, we still have a little bit of gray hydrogen. Of course, in the net zero, we have net zero, so there is no gray hydrogen with carbon dioxide emissions. If we look at the graph on the right, by 2050, over 95% of hydrogen in rapid and in net zero comes from green and blue, as we just saw. Then there's the four curves here. Orange, the rapid, green, the business as usual. The solid blue is net zero, and the dotted blue is net zero with 100% green hydrogen. That is our goal. Our goal is net zero with no blue hydrogen. Let me repeat that. Our goal is the dotted line. We don't want any blue hydrogen by 2050. And we must not have any gray hydrogen. So when we do that, we look at the growth rates, the average annual increase in wind and solar capacities in gigawatts. When we see that, the dotted, our goal, achieve somewhere in the 2035 to 2040 a peak in the average increase. So after that date, approaching our 2040, the increases become smaller. So that is why we want to have a strategy and the finances and policies that we rapidly increase our renewable capacities well before the 2050 if we're to achieve our desired goal, particularly the net zero with 100% green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is reshaping our world. Is green hydrogen reshaping the rule of the game? When and where could green hydrogen become cheaper than blue hydrogen? The source of this information is from Bloomberg, New Energy Finance out of London, with the title Green Hydrogen to Start Undercutting Blue by Mid-2020s. And as we see the maps here, the flags of the country, we see China having that date of 2023, followed by Brazil in 2024. To surprise many people, India has a potential of where green hydrogen becomes cheaper than blue as early as 2025. So this sets the stage for some amazing opportunities for India to take advantage of this in their race to zero. The changing role of green hydrogen in today's world. Geopolitics, geoeconomics loom large in today's world. The current events will continue to establish new global relationships, facilitating policies for energy transitions. And again, setting the stage with that is to say we want to build our capacity of renewable, say solar and wind globally, so that excess renewable electricity can be used to electrolyze water to produce the green hydrogen. We see a challenge, many challenges in the energy trilemma. What is the energy trilemma? It looks at energy sustainability, energy security, and importantly, energy affordability. Green hydrogen is in fact reshaping our world. Now let me share with you some information about the International Journal of Hydrogen Energy, which is published by Elsevier for the International Association for Hydrogen Energy as our official journal. The journal was established in 1976. I joined 2 years later as the first assistant editor. 4 years later, it became monthly, bi-weekly in 2008, weekly in 2015. In 2021, we published 40,312 pages in 80 issues. The journal metrics provide valuable insights into aspects of the journal, such as the impact factor and the reach. These metrics help authors select the best journal for the publication of their research finding. Likewise, these performance metrics help the readers select the best journals for their information. Here we see the graph of the impact factor over the last years, and we see that by 2021 we reached an impressive 7.139 for impact factor for the journal. Next here we see the measure of the reach in terms of the number of authors per country or per region. And the size of the circles represents the magnitude. And we see that India has a ranking of number 2 in the world, right behind China. The number of authors is 1,101 over a 5-year period, the last 5-year period. Another way of looking at the reach of the journal is the number of downloads by readers. In this case, India is ranked number 5th in the world with 925,980 downloads in a 5-year period, the most recent 5-year period. So with that, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to give my insights to the World Hydrogen Energy Summit October 16th, 2022 in Delhi, India, via this pre-recorded message to you. Thank you so very much, and best wishes for the rest of the conference. I close by giving you my coordinates. I'm John W. Sheffield, Professor of Engineering Technology at Purdue University. My email is shown here, jsheffy@purdue.edu. I also serve as the president of the International Association for Hydrogen Energy, and as I said, the senior associate editor of the International Journal of Hydrogen Energy. All the best.